Welcome to the Estate of Reality podcast. Join two of the smartest people in real estate as they talk about the reality of today's real estate world. It's nothing like TV. This is the real world. If you are planning to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, or if you are a real estate agent, this podcast is for you. Your hosts are Melissa Haley, broker for North Texas Top Team and CEO of Agent Advantage Coaching and Training, as well as Stephen Etzel, real estate broker, instructor, and owner of Stephen Etzel Real Estate Consulting. Join them as they talk about all things real estate. Subscribe today to catch all of the episodes.
All right, my friend Stephen, we're here today to talk about contracts.
My favorite.
It's your favorite because you have it all right here. All of it's right here in your head.
Yeah. Oh, how I wish. And right when you get it all right there, it changes.
Isn't that the truth? Okay, so Texas Real Estate Commission, recent changes effective February 1st for mandatory use, is we've got this new contract document, right? And when they, of course, make the change to the big 1 to 4 family contract, then it trickles down to all the other contracts. So you want to kind of dive in and maybe share some information today with some folks that might be listening?
Let's take a peek.
Let's take a peek. So folks that would probably get some good benefit today out of listening and watching this podcast are going to be folks that are thinking about buying or selling a home in the near future, right? As well as real estate professionals, because they need to know the information so they can best, help their consumer. But the consumers need to know because, well, the changes affect them as they're buying and selling real property. So I got this pulled up here on my screen. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah. Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to take a look at this new contract. Now, it is available for use right now, right?
Yes, it is.
Available for use right now. The one I have pulled up, though, I have pulled up the one with the red line version. So I know it says draft on here, but y'all don't be confused. It's not a draft. There's actually an official copy of this that is ready that you can use right now, but it's mandatory on February 1st. But Stephen, what happens if you use an old contract? So we're into February. This is mandatory. What happens if I use the old contract from 6 months ago or whatever?
Well, the good thing about it is if you look at the top right-hand corner of the contract, there's your first change or their first update, if you will, 11/07/2022. So you always want to make sure that it is a 20-17. The old contract that we are right now is a 20-16, even though it is legal for about another, give or take 14 days. But after the 14th day, we got to get it on that new contract. If it's not, it's called unauthorized practice of law.
Unauthorized practice of law. All right. Real estate agents do not want to be found practicing law because we don't have a law degree. We got a real estate license. It's very different.
Yeah, that's a big no-no. That's 537.11 of the TREC rule. You do not want to violate that one in any kind of way. And it's also in our code of ethics.
Right, for sure. So got to make sure we're on the right one. All right. So this new contract, mandatory use starting February 1st. So here's the first big change right here on page 1, sales price. So, you would think it used to say cash portion of sales price payable by buyer at closing, and then there was a blank. It seemed so self-explanatory.
Yeah, it gets very confusing. Let me put it that way. The good thing about these contracts, though, before we get into this, the blue, if you ever go onto the TREC website, you go to the front page of the website, all you have to do is type in updated forms or red forms 2023, and they'll pull these up for you. And the good thing is the red goes out, the blue goes in. So everything that we're doing came off the TREC website. So they're very easy to find. And they're all for all 6 of our sales contracts, not just the 1 to 4 family. And the good thing about it is most of the changes through one also go through all of them, but there are some caveats to some that we'll talk about a little bit later. But this change right here was probably one of the most important changes ever, because I see a lot of people, being in lending as well, they get confused with earnest money and down payment. They think it's all one thing.
Yeah.
Or, they also think that where does the earnest money go if it doesn't go towards down payment? And so they identified the fact of where that actually money goes and lines up. If you go to paragraph 18B, it says where the earnest money goes. And so if you look at it, they're separating it, making it a lot more easier for everybody to understand a down payment is exactly what a down payment is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else I love about it is it refers to, okay, the term cash portion does not include proceeds from borrowing any kind of money.
Right.
So no hard money lenders for investors, no other financing that you might be borrowing money from, your folks or somebody to help you. Like, no proceeds from borrowing any kind of money or from selling other real estate except as disclosed. Because I feel like, over the last couple of years, it's been a little bit crazy out there for home buyers. And what a seller needs some assurance is that money is not coming from the sale of another property, that we didn't know you were selling another property. We didn't know this contract was contingent on you getting that money. And I think that's a really big deal.
That's a big point. That's why we have that addendum for sale of the property. And then the other thing too is I'm going to branch off what you just said with that hard money. Most of the time, people didn't even know they were supposed to disclose it. It was supposed to go under conventional because anything that is not government is obviously conventional. But what they did was they weren't even disclosing because they thought hard money was cash. So the good thing was they added under the third party financing other financing.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah,
also
absolutely. Yeah, they just added a whole other section.
Also sets forth, hey, you need to disclose this.
Yeah. If it's not conventional and it's not FHA and it's not VA, okay, now we have an option here for other. Yeah. And I love that. So that's part of that third party financing change for sure.
That's huge, especially now with the market changing. We're going to see a lot more investors coming out too.
Mm-hmm.
I've been facing it now. I mean, more investors are coming out. They're seeing that the market's, the buyer's market is creeping up on us. Let's put it that way. And they're getting more. They think they're going to get a better deal, of course, and the property values are coming down. So hard money is going to be a big thing. Huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's not in blue or red on this page, but I think it's important, and you and I kind of chatted about it earlier, and I think we really need to bring it up, is there was also a change regarding this first box here under 4A for residential leases. What was the big change that they made to the residential lease form?
Well, the residential lease form track 51-0 is the actual form that you would attach to if you have renters in the property. And one of the biggest changes they did, they added to it oral leases, written or oral leases. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important that is. If it's a written lease in real estate, obviously statute of limitations is 4 years. But if it's a lease of 12 months or less and it's an oral lease, it's still enforceable. And the statute of limitations is 2 years. So that's why a lot of people, when you're asking them, do you have any leases? And they look at you and go, do you have anything that you didn't write? That's another question you might want to ask, because even if you didn't write it, that could have changed the contract in a sense, wrote an amendment, and that's another contract at that point in time. So that's why everybody has to disclose to you at any one time what they're saying to their tenants. And, being in property management myself, if you don't put it in writing, guess what? They're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. But the whole thing is you want to get it in writing. And even if you have any oral agreements, and that goes with even farm and ranch, that goes with any leases that you have that are 12 months or less, you want to make sure you disclose.
Yeah, which could be like a surface lease or something else.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Surface leases, ground leases, grazing leases, whatever you got.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I did a transaction in 2022 where there was a guy that owned a house on some acreage. It was a residential sale, but he had a mobile home out on the front part of his acreage, and they had an oral lease, and that was a whole mess because there was no form for that.
No.
And he was like, well, this guy's living out there, and maybe the guy who wants to buy it will want to keep the renter. And of course, then the buyer was like, we don't want the renter. We don't want a mobile home living in our front yard. And it was just, such a mess. So I kind of love it that they're putting some things into place to where it's addressed in the contract, and it's not so much just figuring it out and putting it in, somewhere else, making sure everybody's up to speed, Well,
hopefully it cuts off on legal battles that shouldn't even be in place. I mean, then you go into a month-to-month lease and you got to evict them, and it just goes on and on and on.
Oh yeah, it was a mess. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's look at another thing in here, because you talked about earnest money, and earnest money is over here on another page. It's not even part of that down payment at all. The update that they have here was just a little bit of stuff about escrow agent. Do you have any words of advice or anything you want to share about why we changed it? I don't even know why we changed it.
I actually really like, believe it or not, this is actually a good change. I mean, if you look at it, earnest money, let's just kind of get into this just for a sec, because there is some confusion. And I get this from not only agents, but also consumers. They look at me and go, do I have to give earnest money? Well, the answer is no. Under a Trek 1 to 4 family contract, earnest money is not even required. Right. But option money is required, because option money is considered quid pro quo, which means this for that, right? You have to give to receive. And I've had agents call me and they say, well, I want an option, but I don't want to give any option money. Well, here's the thing. We can't give you an option money without money. I had one agent say, well, where does it say that in the contract? Thanks for asking. All right. So if you go down to B, it actually tells you, if you go down to B, it says for nominal consideration. What does that just tell you? Nominal in Latin means a percentage of an amount. So what does that mean? You got to give money. And then they say, well, how much do I have to give? Thanks for asking again. All right, if you head on down to D, here it is. All right, failure to timely deliver option money if no dollar amount. What did that just say? $1. Ding, ding, ding. And so that basically tells you you have to give it at least $1, right? Yeah. And so there is some confusion going on with this option money and earnest money. All right, another thing with the earnest money and option money is it goes to the title company. That's another situation that we've been facing out in the field where, back in the day, what we'd have is you give the option money to the seller, then we give the title company the earnest money, and it was kind of separated out. Now, if you're going to write a check, you can write one big check or you can write 2 checks and they go to the title company. Now, here's another thing that people are getting really confused about and why I believe they capitalize escrow. They believe that the escrow agent can give legal advice. They believe the escrow agent can give real estate advice. Well, escrow in Latin means neutral. That's what people don't understand.
They're the neutral third party.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell you how many times, even I talk to agents, we'll have the escrow agent work that out. No, no, and no. The contract is between the buyer and the seller. You represent either the buyer or the seller as a representation, not as a counsel. That's a lawyer, everybody, right? And so we're just giving advice and opinions. It's their transaction. And what does the escrow agent do? Sell you title insurance. That's it, everybody. They're regulated by TDI. And so I believe by capitalizing escrow agent, that's enforcing the fact that no, they're not a part of this contract. It's the buyer and the seller, and they're a neutral party that's involved, not that they're supposed to be giving legal advice and everything else that everybody expects them to do.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think that if I worked at a title company, or if I was an escrow agent or escrow officer, right, the officer for the company, I wouldn't want that liability. No. It's not, my job is to collect the money, hold the money, distribute the money as appropriate per the contract, right? Like they're just trying to follow the contract. They're not in charge of the buyer and the seller's decisions. Yeah.
Here's another question that's been kind of confusing with this option money. If you want to extend the option money. So if you want to extend the option money, if you have a bona fide option period and you want to extend it, you can do it, but you need to use a amendment. All right. The amendment, paragraph 6. And here's the biggest confusion I get out of this. Well, where's that option money go? The seller.
Sure does.
It says it in the amendment. It says the seller has received the option money. So that means it's past tense. Right. So that's implying that they've already got it, or they're going to get it within a short period of time. Correct. Right. So you want to make sure that the original goes to the title company, the extension goes to the seller, and you always got to give money, and the escrow agent is always the neutral party.
Yeah. And you know what else I love about, like, you've got to give money, right? Because you were talking about that whole quid pro quo thing. And if you don't give any money, you don't get anything in return. So if you don't pay, again, we went into that failure to pay a second ago, but if you don't pay, you don't get the option to terminate. It doesn't mean the contract goes away. You just don't get the option to terminate. You didn't buy it.
There's no option period.
Yeah, you didn't buy it. You didn't pay for it. You don't get it. Right. And you don't get the money back if you back out, because you got what you paid for, which was the option to back out.
Which was nothing. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
You bought that right, and you can exercise the right if you want to. Yeah, agreed. Yep.
That's
all right. Well, let me go find us another thing that's a big change on the contract. So let me get to scrolling down here a little bit. All right, under survey here, they cover from a capital survey to a little survey, little s, lowercase s. Making a quick change into the section here about title commitments and objections and so on and so forth. You want to mention anything about that, or shall I just keep on rolling?
I do want to mention something about objections.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about objections.
Just real quick, please don't put in residential use. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
All right. So I see a lot of people put in residential use. Here's the deal. If you put in residential use, you're writing on a 1 to 4 family contract. So you're going to object why you're going to use it. So there's no reason to do that. That can actually, technically speaking, void out the contract. Why would you object to something that you're going to use it for? So please use that wisely.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's funny is I was in a class not that long ago and some people were saying, but we have to put it in there because what if it's zoned for commercial? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I get it. If it's maybe zoned where it could be either or maybe, but if it's zoned for commercial, it shouldn't be on a 1 to 4 family residential resale contract, right? I mean, hang on, let me go back to the top. Let me go all the way to the top of the contract.
Right.
1 to 4 family residential contract. I mean, it does say residential. So I don't know. But I was there in the class and I did hear the objection and of how they were saying, no, what if it's zoned and whatever? And okay, I kind of could go there with them a little bit, but kind of maybe not. I don't know.
I think that's really stretching it.
Me too. It says residential right here.
Yeah.
It's not. Don't use this contract form.
That's why we have commercial forms.
Right. I'm just saying. I'm kind of right there with you.
Yeah.
100%. All right. Well, so let me keep scrolling down a little bit. Let's get to some other stuff that changed. Oh man, we got some changes down here about these whole notices about water things, right? And there's a lot of water things. We got MUDs, we got WCIDs, we got PIDs. All of this stuff is all over Texas. The whole fact that this is governed partly by the water code is important. So I don't know. You want to talk about maybe chapter 45 of the Texas Water Code?
All right. Well, this is kind of interesting because there is a lot to this, and especially because now we're running kind of short on water. There's a lot of droughts going on. We're running out of water in Texas. In fact, they did in 2012, something came out. Somebody asked about the water code, said, the water district actually wrote a statement saying, if we have a major drought in 2012, we would need 3.9 million feet of water to supply what we need to make up the drought. That's a lot of water coming out of the sky. And so you're looking at it going, that was 2012, where we didn't even have as many people that live there now as we do today. So where that's
right. People keep moving to Texas all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Not only people don't, you got people, you got irrigation for crops, you got animals. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on all of a sudden. And 85% of our irrigation comes from aquifers, also known as pools, if you will. And so that's another reason why they want to start not necessarily regulating, but they want you to register your wells. So that's why they have water conservation districts. And so if you look at it, the MUDs have been around since 1972. And that's actually the Water Code, Chapter 49. And under that code, they changed it in 2019 that says that we have to disclose if you are in a MUD prior to entering a contract, or else you don't have a contract, or the buyer can actually sue up to $5,000 for failure to disclose. And if you keep on reading, chapter 49.590 is where you're going to find that. It actually says that if you don't disclose at all, which is a bad day, they can actually sue up for the property value plus attorney fees, court costs, and interest. So it's becoming real, And if you look at it, there's 1,200 MUDs in the state of Texas, and there's 254 counties. You're probably going to find a MUD.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, okay, so municipal utility district, right? That's what MUD's all about.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, the reason that I think that they're telling people they have to make the disclosure is because if I buy a property that's in a MUD, there are additional costs of ownership.
Yeah,
right?
5.14, 5.014 of the property code, tax districts.
Yeah. I need to know that I'm going to have these additional costs. And so as a home buyer, I need to be aware that I'm in this MUD or PID or whatever it is, right? But so where can somebody find information about a MUD? Is there a list of MUD districts somewhere?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's Texas Environmental Quality Commission is where you're going to find that. There's actually a website where you can find the MUDs. Also, you can find PIDs. PIDs are kind of hard to find, but PIDs are called public improvement districts, and there's about 104 or so of those in the state. that are known, let's put it that way. And there's also a notice for that, or it's actually an addendum, I should say. It's called the Trek 53-0. And then water conservation districts are a little rough to find, but I've been able to find them by Googling them. All I do is Google water conservation district and let's say Parker County, they pop right up. And so you want to make sure you're disclosing all these things. There's another point that I think we should make about this as well. Not only is there an extra fee for us, but a lot of people are misinformed about when they move to Texas about property taxes. Property taxes in Texas are pretty high compared to other states. And a lot of people say, well, if you're 100% disabled from the military, you move to Texas, you don't have to pay taxes. Well, that's not necessarily true. All right, you don't have to pay property taxes. Those are called ad valorem taxes. But we were up in Corinth. We were selling a property, and he was 100% disabled, and he got a tax bill for $4,000. He's like, well, where am I supposed to get this tax bill? First question I asked him is, was it a MUD? He said, yeah, you do. Yeah. Because that could also be considered a special assessment. Right. So it depends on how these are assessed under the property tax rules of how you're going to pay and if you're not going to pay. That's what's important. So when people start telling people, oh, when you move to Texas, you don't have to pay property taxes, you might want to look up the property tax and see how they're taxed to see if that's 100% true or not.
Right. Because it may be different. Right. For sure.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, he came unglued.
I bet.
And so you want to make sure you get the proper information. You can also go to the title company and get preliminary title searches. Those are probably the best thing to do. And they can find a lot of these as well.
Yeah, that's a smart idea too. I mean, that's part of the service that they can provide. But you know what else? I think because you mentioned the TCEQ website. If you go on that TCEQ website, you can find MUDs, and I think you can find your water conservation districts too. I'm pretty sure they're all in there.
I don't know if they all are, but I mean, I found the majority. Let's put it that way.
For sure. Yeah, PIDs are a little harder to find though. But one of the largest servicers, if you will, of PIDs in our area, at least up in the North Texas area, is called MuniCap, MUNICAP, and I'm sure that stands for municipal capital. But that's what they do, is they run the money for the municipal services that they're running for these PIDs, because that's the public improvement district, right? And they can provide more than just water. Public improvement districts can do water. They can do, another public improvement, like maybe they're going to build a gazebo in a park or something like that. But that district, if you live in that district, you still got to pay these extra fees. It's, again, all about that cost of ownership. And it's important that a seller make sure that they let a buyer know you're going to have this extra cost when you buy this piece of property.
Absolutely. And, MUDs can go down too. People don't realize it.
Yeah.
And PIDs, you can pay out a PID too.
You can pay the PID off.
Left, you can pay them off.
Yeah. PID can be paid off by the current owner or by a new owner, or it can just keep transferring until somebody pays it off. I've never had anybody say, I want to pay mine off. No. Because they're like, why would I do that when I could just transfer it to the next guy and make him keep paying on it? But, is it an option? Sure. And once it's paid off, it's done.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Might as well just get it over with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because they do charge interest. Go figure.
It's a good selling point, though. Sometimes if you only owe $8,000 left, it's a negotiation tool.
Yeah, for sure. 100% when you're trying to negotiate between the buyer and the seller. All right. Now, here's another one. I'm scrolling down the contract here, and here's a big one that changed that I just...
One of my favorites.
I love this change about sellers making repairs and so forth that they've agreed to make in the contract. If they've made an amendment to the contract that now says, I'm going to do this thing, or if they set up above in a paragraph 7, what is it up here? 7D2, if they said they were going to do something, well, now you got to do it. You got to do it with somebody who's licensed to do it or does it commercially. But now you also have to provide documentation that you did it and you got a receipt and it's paid for.
Love it.
I love that.
That's probably one of the best updates that they did, because prior to that, we would have to ask for the receipts. We'd have to have the contract.
Yeah. And sometimes people trying to give you the receipt and sometimes they're not. And I would not want to be the buyer moving in to find out that the seller didn't pay for the repair that they got done.
Another thing too is I like also if there's any warranties that transfer too, that's also good too.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Okay.
Sure, they transfer too at the closing.
Yeah. And the biggest warranty transfer that I see happening all the time is foundation work.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd say some roof every once in a while, but foundation is probably the biggest.
Yeah, roof too. But yeah, and that's what always people want. They're like, if you fix the foundation, I need that lifetime transferable warranty. Well, if there's a fee now to make the transfer and make the change, the seller's got to arrange for the transfer. They got to fill out the form, get it all transferred to the new guy's name, and then they got to pay for the fee if there is a fee. I'm kind of happy that it's back in the seller's court. Like, I'm selling you this house and it comes with a warranty. Oh, by the way, here's the warranty.
Yeah, that's good.
Not, yeah, it's got a warranty if you decide to fill out a piece of paper and ask for it.
Well, one of the things that I kind of branch off on this a little bit, because I ask for certain things in contracts, to make sure the repairs are done, which this does definitely help.
Yeah.
But one of the three things that I've learned in my little bit of experience in real estate,
just a little bit of experience.
I ask for receipts. I mean, obviously, scope of work receipts. I also ask for before and after pictures.
Ooh, smart.
Just in case, people can just try to throw something over top of it and say it's done.
Yeah.
And then I've also realized this, and this comes with a lot of property management experience, is if they go out and they say a part needs to be replaced, I want to keep that part.
You want to keep the old one?
Absolutely. Whatever part comes out, I want it. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had, give an example, an AC guy went out the other day meeting last year, fixed one of our AC units. And he said that the coil was gone on it, that it needed to be replaced. Well, that's an $1,800 part. How many times do coils go out? How many times do a coil get a hole? You actually literally got to shoot it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those things never go out. And all it was a damper fan, a damper fan for upstairs, downstairs. Well, that's a $350 problem all of a sudden, instead of having to pay $1,800 for new coil. Anyway, I told him I wanted the part. I kept the part. I took it down to a buddy of mine that is an AC guy. The only reason why I didn't call him was he was busy and I needed it done ASAP because it was 104 degrees out. And so he came out and fixed it, took it down there. He said, there's nothing wrong with this. He bought it off me for $1,400 because he said, I really do need to go replace one of the same models that are about 4 doors down from you. So he bought that part off me. I made $1,400, and I called the manager of this guy and said, hey man, there was nothing wrong with that. They reimbursed me $1,800 for the repair.
Dang, that's like the double whammy.
I learned real quick that, not everybody is as honest as everybody could be. Let's put it that way. And so if you're going to do something, make sure they're doing it right and make sure that you're covering yourself, or else, you just spend money that you should have paid.
Yeah. You know what though? I would have never, ever, ever in a million years thought to say, and I want the old part. I'd have been like, the old part's broke, throw it away. Oh.
All the time. I do that with even vehicles.
Yeah. My husband's always like getting new tires, and he's like, I want the old tires.
No, I'm not that bad. I'll take the alternator or something, but I'm not going to take the tires. I have nowhere to keep them.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Good stuff. I would have never thought that at all. That's a good tip. I love, love, love that. All right. How about this next one? That's a big change right here, that they're basically just telling us that the home warranty companies, that's what we call them all the time, but the residential service contracts, that those companies are now regulated by Texas Department of Licensing, not by TREC.
Right.
And we've just put that here in the contract, which I guess it's good notification to a consumer, right?
Well, the good thing about it, the good thing is these TREC forms, they're promulgated, which means published. So that means anybody can use them. And so, when you're looking at these forms, they also got to be consumer friendly too. So they got to know what departments they're dealing with. So,
yeah,
that's good that they tell everybody who regulates them. So if they have a problem.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good idea too. And, it's not a requirement that anybody gets a residential service contract, but it's kind of nice if you're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on your first house and you're a first time home buyer and you're worried that something might go out. It's kind of nice to make sure that you at least have a little bit of peace of mind, just a little, for the first, bit of time you own the house. Not a bad idea.
I like getting them when I list the property.
Yeah. Yeah. I always recommend to my sellers all the time, you ought to get one. And especially, right now, as the market's kind of shifting a little bit, I'm like, look, we could use that to market, and we could be like, hey, you could buy that house or you could buy our house and we already have a warranty.
That's right.
I do. Yeah.
Here's another thing a lot of people don't think about: renters. Rental, if you have a rental property, I put them on those too.
Yeah, I have one on every single one of my rental properties. Yep. 100%. All right, well, let's go look at this other thing down here that's changed. So at closing, it's got a lot of stuff about what's got to happen at closing. I think a lot of people just look at this paragraph 9 and they're like, 9A, the closing date will be on this date. And then they're like, okay, that's all I need.
Yeah.
There's a lot more going on in paragraph 9. But one of the things that it's talking about in here, of course, is that now we're going to provide all of that transferable warranty documents. All that stuff's got to happen, but also private transfer fees. So let's chat about that for just a second, because, there was some legislation about transfer fees. I think we just need to talk about transfer fees just in general real quick as we're talking about what happens at closing.
Well, I think one of the things to start off with is who has transfer fees, HOAs and POAs. Whenever I say HOA and POA, sometimes people go, well, what just happened right there? And so basically, what happens is this, all right? If you're dealing with an HOA, Trek kind of re-identified the verbiage real quick. So HOAs for condos, POAs are for property owner associations.
Right.
So if you're selling a condo, that would be an HOA. If you're selling a house that's an association, that would be a POA.
Sure.
All right. Now, the reason why they changed it was in the HOA contract, it already has all the information you need. If you're selling a POA, you have to add the addendum 36-9, which is mandatory membership in a property owner association.
Right.
And so there is an addendum for one there is not. But transfer fees go both directions, right? And so if it's a POA or an HOA, you're going to have to deal with these. The good thing about it is September 1st, 2021, Senate Bill 1588 came out and said, whoa, wait a second here. Now Trek has to have a public website, or on their website, which is public. If you go to the website, go all the way down the bottom, there's a link that actually goes to the POAs, HOAs in the county. I'll just put in the county, you put in the name of the HOA or POA, and it'll tell you what the transfer fees are. And they also limited the transfer fees to $375 and $50 for expediting. So that's a good thing. And that's what we're supposed to be disclosing. I remember the good old days, you go to the closing table and go, wait, what? The transfer fee is $1,000? Why didn't we know that before we got to this point, right? And so it's good that there's somewhere where we can actually find this stuff.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I love it that it's on the radar of the Texas legislature that there needs to be some kind of, regulation with regards to the capping of the fees and all of the stuff, because you're right. Sometimes it was $300 and sometimes it was $1,000 and nobody knew what any of them were.
Oh, and here's the other fun part. A lot of times you go to close and they got other fees, like CID, community industrial development, who knows what they're calling about it. They got a tree fee. What is that all about? And so, but as long as they don't name it transfer fee, it looks like they're still getting away with charging fees. That's the problem. So
yeah,
I
a little bit of a loophole.
what they're trying to do, but I think they ought to broaden it out a little bit than just transfer fees.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's still room for improvement, but man, it was a good improvement that we got with that Senate bill for sure. I agree.
Especially that we even know what it is.
Well, and because we already talked about in the contract here earlier today that it's all about the buyer knowing the cost of the home ownership, right? Mm-hmm. And this is part of it. It's the cost of owning the property, whether you're buying it or selling it. There's these fees that are involved, and who's going to pay them and how are they addressed? And now they've got some regulation. I just think that whole cost of ownership thing it's a big deal, because at the end of the day, Trek is a consumer protection agency. They're there to protect the consumer.
Yeah, exactly. From us. All right.
From us, and also so that they're aware of what they're doing when they're moving forward with the purchase,
Another private transfer fee is not just, transfer fees for associations, but also in some associations like Lantana, they have that 1% or 0.5% transfer fee education fund. And, there's other things that are available out there too, that we got to definitely be aware of.
Yeah, well, that brings you all the way back around to geographic competency now, doesn't it?
That's exactly. Yeah, there you go, right there.
Love that. All right, so special provisions is the next piece of the contract that had a big change, and we weren't supposed to be writing in special provisions very much before, and well, we're still not, right?
Yeah, stay out of it. Yeah, the good, unless you ask your broker, you get advice before you put it in there. But I think the good thing is they kind of identify the fact we don't practice law. I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are still misusing it. I've seen some stuff in special provisions. I'm thinking, whoa. And escalator clauses were a big deal. FHA appraisal waivers were a big deal, people were writing stuff that were like the FHA appraisal waiver. It's already in the contract. It's third-party financing addendum. So why would you put it in there?
Yeah, and then don't write it again.
Yeah, you know, you don't have to do it again, right? And then, or, you know, I've seen people say, you know, house may have lead-based paint. Yeah, we have an addendum for that. So we don't need to put that in there. So it was being very, very misused.
You know what? I love this right here. And it says, because it talks about like agents aren't supposed to be practicing law, but it says right here, and it says, oh, I can't make it highlight. Dang it. Right here, where it says, and they shall not add to, delete, or modify any provision of the contract.
Yep.
Right. Because that's the definition of this practicing law. If it's already written in, don't go changing it. Because if you do, well, who wrote the contract to start with? An attorney.
Well, the good thing also is this lines up with our new amendment that's under modifications too.
Yeah.
Under modifications 9, which is basically special provisions in your amendment.
Yeah.
So it's good. Follow suit.
Yep. Love, love, love it. Realtors, don't write in paragraph 11. Talk to your
broker.
Stay
out of it.
Stay out of it. Talk to your broker. All right. Next big change, paragraph 13 under prorations over here. And it's talking about, hey, when we go to closing, everybody pays for what they got. And if you lived here, you pay the taxes. And if you're not living here yet and you're you got to pay those taxes, right? But it's not just taxes.
Yeah. A little bit more to it than that. You know, maintenance fee, assessment fees, you know, any other fee that you can possibly imagine. So I'm glad rents, if it's a rental property. So I'm glad they identified prorations. Prorations is divide, right? Who pays for what? So it's good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, you get what you paid for and you don't pay for somebody else's part. Right.
Yep.
Love it. All right. Let's get down here to another section. We got a lot of that stuff about escrow agent, like we talked about in the very beginning of the contract. It's just because this whole paragraph is all about escrow agents. I do kind of like that they added right here. Okay, what happens if no closing occurs? Because sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes even though you have the best intentions, we don't go to closing. And it says that the escrow agent may require a written release of liability of the escrow agent before they release the earnest money. That's why we have a form for that, right?
Cut back on dispute.
Yeah, cut back on disputes, cut back on somebody coming after the title company after they already gave money, because everybody's like, well, we had the right to terminate. Why do we have to fill out the form? Well, because it protects everybody. Hello.
Yeah, absolutely. Mutual release, right? Get them out of there.
Yeah, before we get off in there and start getting rid of getting that money disposed of. All right. How about this? I do kind of love me some of this paragraph on paragraph 21.
I do too.
Why do you think it's so important that they have this in here and a copy to the agent?
Well, I believe that a lot of agents were notifying themselves, and then they were kind of passing like a hot potato to their clients. That's not the way it should go.
No, bad idea.
Go to your clients first, and if you want to be CC'd, that's one thing. But I never want to be responsible for passing, especially personal information onto my clients. That is why on your E&O coverage as brokers, we can actually add cybersecurity onto our coverage now, because what's going on is our emails do get hacked. Yeah. And the title company uses, secure servers and everything else, which we might not have as secure. And I'd rather it be on them, not on me. And so even before they wrote this in there, I would tell my agents, don't do that, please. If you're going to CC it, that's one thing, but don't put your name on there, then pass it on. Yeah. Another thing about notifications is I wish, this is my personal opinion, I wish they would take out fax. I mean, who am I, right? I mean, I understand we have electronic faxes, so I think that, but I wish fax would probably go bye, because I don't have a fax. Do you have a fax?
Wait, you don't have a fax? You got rid of that thing?
If you can find a Kinko's, you can find a fax machine. Yeah, exactly.
You remember that thermal paper? Wait, I think we might be dating ourselves.
Carbon copies.
Oh, gosh.
You get the pink one, you get the blue one. Yeah, you get the yellow one.
Yeah.
Oh, man, my pen wasn't very good. It didn't go all the way through.
Oh, my gosh. Well, yeah, because you know what? That's actually funny that you say that, because for the longest time, we were just telling agents, just if you're going to put yourself in there, to put CC and then put your own email address or CC the agent or whatever. And the agents didn't know what CC meant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Carbon copy.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. It's in your email too, when you write a to and then you can CC people, but everybody's like, what does that mean?
Right.
Carbon copy.
Yeah, I had somebody the other day. What's BC?
Blind.
Oh boy, blind copy.
Carbon copy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes you got to help people. That's our job.
You do. Well, I love it that they added this to the contract, because I do feel like now it's like, no, the notice goes to the buyer here, to the seller here. And by the way, if you want a copy of it, here, put your contact info into.
Absolutely. We're last in line.
Yeah, last in line, and not responsible when we're just getting copied, right? The responsible goes to the buyer and the seller. I love that. All right, we tell them one more time, brokers and sales agents can't give legal advice. Read the contract carefully.
I actually really like the change that they made here, because as you say, license holders, and people are going, aren't lawyers license holders?
Oh man.
And so they would say check for, prohibits, which banned real estate license holder. That's kind of a wide range, right? That could be anybody. So I'm glad they identified it.
Yeah, I think that's smart. All right, we get over here to the last page where we got the signatures. We got all the information here about the folks that are involved in the transaction, all the good stuff. We've got that receipt page. All these things are all part of the contract. They're all very important, but I think we hit most of the big stuff. However, I'm going to take the screen share off. Is not everything, right? There were changes to other parts, like we talked about on third-party financing. When you put that cash in there, right, and it's no longer a hard money loan where you're putting it all in cash and you're out of financing, we've added that section, right? But there are some other things, because you said in the beginning there were some small little, I think you called them caveats, maybe. I'm not sure if that's how you called it. For other things that changed. So what about the change to farm and ranch and unimproved property, where we've got like land going on? What kind of change did we see there regarding, say, for example, the disclosures?
Well, one of the things that they did on Farm and Ranch, which was, I still find a little interesting, because if you go to 7H in the Farm and Ranch contract, or you go to 7E in the unimprovement contract, they have a seller's disclosure notice. Well, in the contract, or the agreement, I should say, shouldn't the seller be disclosing that? So why is it in the contract for them to check the boxes? So I'm a little kind of lost on that one right there, but hey, who am I, right? All right, but that's why we also have the TXR 1408, which basically is property condition form. So they're supposed to be disclosing all that stuff anyway. Right. But on the flip side, they added some check boxes, like for oak wilt. They added something for oak wilt. They also added something for flooding. They're getting really more into the flooding portion of things, because that's affecting our insurance policies. And ironically, not only for buyers and sellers, but also for renters. That's why we also have to disclose, if you're in 100-year less floodplain, we have to disclose that to the renters, because that also affects their renter insurance. So, and that's a TXR form as well. So, that is getting more and more prevalent in areas, because the flood zones are changing as well.
Yeah, well, and after too, we had some pretty significant water damage. Hurricane Harvey, man, that was a big deal. And so many people that weren't normally affected, all of a sudden were affected in this water situation. And I think that really brought a little bit of it to the forefront, because a lot of it kind of happened right after that, where we started changing our sellers' disclosure notices.
The Harvey Act.
Yeah, regarding all of that. It was important.
Another good thing that they changed on the farm ranch contract was they put counties, not county.
Yeah.
So more than one. A lot of times you sell a farm ranch could be 2 different counties.
Well, sure. Yeah.
And one of the most important changes I've seen was it's for the use of the property, not the size.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite ones.
And they clarified some stuff, I think, on farm and ranch too, with regards to price per acre, right? Or what your price was going to be if it needed to be adjusted. Yeah. Yeah,
not between a price, but calculate it by that. Absolutely. That's on paragraph 3. So you can adjust it accordingly if it's over or under whatever the whatever the survey comes out.
Right.
Another thing, they also took out a couple things on property, for claims, permits, strips and gores. Whenever you say property, that's all inclusive. So they took out and named certain things that are included that should automatically be exclusively into property as well.
Right. Yeah. Talking about all the improvements, right? Because it's the land and all of the improvements.
And rights thereof. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. Man, I feel like we've had some really good discussion today. I hope that whoever's watching, whoever's listening is getting some good information, and that either think, number one, holy cow, I really need a realtor because I can't do this by myself. I need to have somebody who's got a real estate license guide me through this process. And I think number two is if you are in the real estate profession and this is what you do for a living, boy, you got to get educated. You've got to make sure you're up to speed on all your CE and all your stuff, because man, this stuff's important.
Another thing I just want to add is these were only the Trek changes. These are promulgated changes in addendums. TXR made changes too.
Yeah.
So you want to go to the TXR website and see all those changes and some new forms that came out as well. So we got to be educated in all the forms that we use, not just one of the two that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I know. We spent a lot of time here today just talking about that one form and just the changes that are mandatory starting February 1st. How many times did contract change in the last 5 years? A boatload.
Yeah. So
yeah, people get educated and get assistance if you are planning to make a move for sure. All right. Well, my friend, is there anything else you think we need to cover in tonight's episode of this podcast, or you feel like we already gave them lots to consider and they better just come back next time and subscribe?
I think they just it's like drinking out of a fire hose right now. There's a lot of changes, a lot of things to wrap our brains around a little bit, and a lot of times to go back in. And it's like I encourage everybody, if you have any questions, Melissa's here to help. I'm here to help. And so please reach out to us. That's another part of what we do, right? Not only do we educate through podcasts, but we're also here to help everybody grow in this business. And that's the reason why we're here, is to help improve ourselves and others. So we learn from one another, and that's all we got.
That's right. 100%. All right. Well, y'all join us next time on the next episode. We can't wait to have y'all listening in and find out what we're going to talk about next, because y'all, it could be anything. It could be anything.
We don't know.
Awesome. All right. Well, peace out, everybody.